What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to For the Millie. Really fun Thursday night showdown here between the Giants and the Cowboys. We're also going to talk a lot about main slate, including what I believe is a massive edge, just kind of understanding why passing production is down as much as it is around the NFL. And if we can take advantage of that, that can turn into some really big wins over on the DraftKings side of things. We'll also talk a lot about Pick6. I wrote an article today about Pick6, which gets into the strategy of it, but it's also just about why you should be playing it, why it's so much fun. So TwoGun, we will talk a ton about that as well. I know you've really been enjoying Pick6 so far this season.
Yeah, I really like Pick6 basically for three reasons. First, you're playing against other people. And I can't stress that enough. Like, if you're playing these types of more or less games on other sites, they will limit you in a heartbeat if you show that you're a winner. And they will adjust the odds if you start to correlate and basically make smart lineups. So when you're playing against other people, you basically can win. And when you do something smart and other people do something stupid, you actually can have an edge. And this game is so new that other people haven't really figured it out yet. So you really can be able to win. And the second reason I like it is that, like, with DFS, with these slate breakers, like, if you don't have that 40-point guy, you're going to lose. Mm-hmm. With this, the 40-point guy just means one more. It's not so extreme with, how you win or lose with this versus, regular DFS.
And in that way, I think it's a really great alternative. Like, for years, people have kind of gone with this theory of, I'm going to play cash games to build my bankroll and complement my tournament play, which is obviously riskier, high risk, high reward. I kind of view Pick6 as this much more fun, higher upside version of cash games where, to your point, like you can play it as kind of a bankroll builder type of game, but it's just I think a much more fun puzzle. And then also, like, it's really easy, for example, to think about it. If you have a tournament or a stack that you think is in a great spot, but you know that it's going to be just too popular to be a great tournament play, and it scares you to kind of fade that team in your tournament lineups, well, just go ahead, stack them up on Pick6. If they hit, you're in great position over on Pick6. And if they don't, you're in great position in your tournament. So I think you can accomplish everything that you're trying to accomplish in cash games, do it more effectively, and have more fun doing it over on Pick6.
Yeah, like, that's something that the DFS economy just hasn't had in almost a decade, is the ability to build a bankroll. Everyone's like, oh, I want to be able to win a little bit, each week or whatever. And I basically, for the last 5-6 years, I've told you you're just dreaming. Mm-hmm. If you want to emulate me, I'm just like, lose, big win, lose, big win. And I tell you, the way you can do that where it sounds extreme money is, entering satellites or other GPPs where it's still like 300 users or less. It's still a top-heavy payouts, but it's not an extreme variance as the Million Maker. But with this Pick6 thing, you finally have something where I'm not saying you can win every week, but you can actually win the majority. If you have enough edge and you do it right, and other people still keep doing it wrong, yeah, it's definitely possible, to win more weeks than lose and to grow your bankroll steadily. And that's just not something you've had. And eventually it's going to get harder. People are going to figure it out. I don't know when this is going to be. I'm telling you, and I talk about a lot more on our paywall show. Every week I go through the lineups on the main slate, and I kind of like color code, what percentage of people are doing it right, what percentage of people are doing it wrong. And right now it seems to be about 70 to 75% wrong. I'll kind of like, I'm going to give our, stuff the heads up when I say, hey, I've noticed it's down to 50%. Hey, it's down to 30%. Hey, it's down to 20%. And it probably will get there. But now's the time to hit it while, you still can get an edge much faster.
Yeah, promo code FTN will get you some free money when you do sign up. And it's interesting. We get this question here about CMC's condition. Well, CMC's absence there in week 1 is when you had that 100x payout on your 6 for 6. Won over $50,000. We get another island game tonight, so we can hunt that huge payout again here tonight. But before we get there, let's talk a little bit about the main slate and just about kind of the whole landscape of the passing offense in football right now. Because if you turn on any NFL Live type show, if you read any type of DFS article around the industry right now, you're going to hear one main argument for why this is happening, and it's too high safeties. Teams are playing more too high safety. Teams are reacting by running the ball more and throwing it short. But here's the thing. That's not the full story. And we know that's not the full story because we at FTN, one of our big advantages is that we have our own charted data. And our charting is done by just an incredibly knowledgeable team, just from in terms of football minds, and then also just really disciplined, really structured charters. So we know that our data is extremely reliable. One of the things that we do different from others is we don't necessarily chart pre-snap looks. We chart what actually happens after the play and what happens in the coverage itself. And so one thing that is certainly happening is that teams are lining up in more too high coverages, and teams are responding by running the ball more. But here's the thing. When teams do throw the ball, they are not throwing against a higher rate of too high safeties this year than they have in the past few years. When teams actually throw, they're throwing into just as much too high. So too high coverages can't at least fully explain why passing efficiency is down, why average depth of target is so far down. And the reason, at least in my mind, based on what I have seen in the data, and I actually wrote an article about this earlier today, comes down to pressure. Teams are getting more pressure than they've ever gotten before. Sack rate has just exploded. It's going up and significantly up every single year for the last 5 years and even before that. And teams are really performing poorly against the blitz. So you combine all these things, and okay, teams are scared of the pressure getting home, so they're getting the ball out quicker. That means they're also getting it out shorter. And to that point, time to pressure has also never been faster. Last year, Pittsburgh led the NFL in their average time to pressure at 2.1 seconds. This year, there are 4 teams already at 2.0 or better. Last year, only 2 teams were faster than 2.3 seconds. This year, there are 12 such teams. So they're getting home faster. It's forcing the ball out. It forces the ball out short. All of this said, we have a very clear way of attacking the main slate, therefore. We know that the teams who do have the chance to get those 300-yard, 3-touchdown passing performances like Cincinnati did are when teams are, number one, not playing as much too high coverage. They're willing to play some single high coverage. But most importantly, it's in matchups where they're going to struggle to get to the quarterback. For whatever reason, they're either going to struggle to get to the quarterback, or the quarterback and the offensive scheme has shown an ability to consistently beat the blitz. When we can find those teams, we can find offenses that are really going to separate. So, TwoGun, over the last few weeks, we saw Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase do this past Monday. Of course, they weren't on the main slate. But does that, number one, excite you at all? And number two, you've always kind of taken this stance of, I'm going to play a bunch of stacks, basically just mix and match all these stacks and then try to win elsewhere. Does this make you want to maybe change up your strategy a little bit and start targeting offenses a little bit more heavily?
Yeah, honestly, I feel like I'm kind of having to adjust to it myself and have to think about things a little bit differently. It's fine. Generally, a lower scoring is generally better for me, historically speaking. Last week I did okay. The previous 2 weeks, not so much. And the funny thing is, last week is, I did great on the wide receivers, but my running backs and tight ends were terrible. But I think we were onto something in our show where we talked about how the tight end will become even more important.
Yep.
I just was on the wrong tight end. We were on Sam Laporta, and then I also had Greg Dulcich or whatever, and he did nothing. If I had Dallas Goedert, and he was even cheaper, but still kind of a premium tight end, then I could have maybe won $1 million last weekend. So yeah, I think it might put a little bit more premium. Even though it's funny because it's lower scoring, but it might put more of a premium on premium players.
Yeah.
Is what might end up happening.
Yeah, and I think
your floors are going to be going down, and people in their head, this guy's always going to give me at least 10 points, and no, he gets you 3. So I think it's not so much everyone's thinking about how the ceiling's going lower, but my first thought is, well, the floors are also going lower too.
Yeah, I think it also gives us a little bit more license to fade chalk, because if quote unquote ceiling performances, if chalk hitting is going to be 20 to 25 points instead of 30 to 35 a lot of the time, then that just gives us a little bit more license to try and find that 30-point performance from some contrarian guys. But we will talk a lot more about the Sunday slate and the specific plays that we like on Sunday morning live at 10 o'clock. It's a paywalled show. You can also find it in any of our articles. Last thing I want to say about the main slate is you touched on this a little bit, but I think this is all especially true about the tight end position. Last week it was Dallas Goedert, but your point there about putting more emphasis on the premium players, I think that's never going to be more true than it is right now about tight ends. So week in, week out, I think goal number one might even be find the 25-plus point performance from tight ends and build out the rest of the lineup around that. But with that said, let's jump into tonight's showdown because I think this is a really fun slate. We've got what should be a much more interesting Giants-Cowboys matchup than we might have expected coming into the season. Dallas has underperformed the Giants coming off their best performance in probably a year and a half at the minimum. So lots of optimism out of New York with Malik Neighbors showing that he is the stud we all hoped he would be. What's your first thought about this slate? Where do you think people are going to go, and what is your favorite build for tonight?
It's funny because I just keep changing my mind ever since I built my first lineup. I just keep going all over the place. At first I was thinking, everyone's going to think Dallas. And I'm like, actually, no. Everyone's going to be on Malik Neighbors. And I'm like, no, wait, no. Maybe they're actually going to be on Devin Singletary is what it's looking like when you actually, look through things. I'm like, everyone's going to be thinking it's too much offense. But that's a little bit more of a pick-6 thing where I think maybe people might take the Moors a little too much. And we should have a little bit more lessons. That's more of a pick-6 strategy. So I'm kind of going more towards onslaught lineups or passing-focused lineups, or let's basically fade Devin Singletary and even try to not use Neighbors or CeeDee Lamb. Kind of using some of those like second-grade pass catchers as a passing lineup. Those are the two ways I'm going. Either I'm going like this is going to be a beatdown one way or another, or they're going to throw it to the Jake Fergusons, Brandon Cooks, Wan'Dale Robinsons of the world. I think he's right now. He's in all my lineups. Time I changed. He will be a little bit chalky, but his price really is good. The other thought I have is these defenses might put up a lot of points. Yeah. So when possible, when it makes sense, I want a defense in my lineup. Right now, I have defenses in 2 out of the 3 of my lineups. I generally don't do double defense, though. I can only choose one or the other.
Yeah, I love that last point. I'm not sure many people realize just how good the Giants' pass rush has been. They're actually leading in adjusted sack rate at actually second behind the Jets. 16.7% adjusted sack rate so far for the Giants. Dallas also third in pressure rate so far. So both of these defenses doing their job in that regard. Dallas obviously has not done very well against the run. They're also allowing a lot of explosive plays, which is why I think there is plenty of interest in this Giants offense, particularly around Neighbors and Singletary. Speaking of Singletary, one of my absolute favorite picks for Pick6 tonight is about Singletary. So we'll get to that shortly. But in the meantime, for the showdown, I'm with you that I think the first thing that I like is just kind of this narrative that, maybe the defenses are a little bit more effective than people expect tonight. But I'd also say I think we have a very clear 1 and 2 in captain ownership tonight with CeeDee Lamb and Malik Neighbors. I like the idea of going to either quarterback, particularly Daniel Jones, since he has some more rushing upside. I don't think the teardrop in ownership that we're going to see is something that we should see. I think these quarterbacks should be closer to the wide receiver ones. Again, specifically Daniel Jones to Malik Neighbors, where I think CeeDee Lamb being that much more popular than Dak Prescott does make sense. This does seem like a really good matchup for CeeDee Lamb. The Giants have been one of the teams playing, I believe, over 70% single high safeties so far in this season. Now, part of that is going to be, dependent on who you're playing, but you're not as afraid of Daniel Jones as you are many quarterbacks in this league. So I think we'll continue to see that trend a little bit tonight. And one of the reasons why we should see a lot of cover one on the other side of the ball from Dallas, or at least single high, not necessarily cover one, but one reason why we should see that is because Dallas has been so bad against the run. My sort of take with run defense is teams are as effective against the run as they want to be, more often than not. And given how much their run defense was exposed a week ago against Baltimore and the week prior against New Orleans, I think Dallas is going to come into this game with one goal in mind, and that's to stop the run. We saw similar things. Philly had trouble in week 2 against Atlanta. They decided, okay, we're not going to allow the same thing to happen in week 3. They were great against the run against New Orleans. We saw the same thing week 1. The Jets were really bad against the run. Week 2, they made an adjustment. They were great against the run. We see this kind of thing all the time. And so I think the most over-owned player tonight is going to be Devin Singletary, as people just kind of expect the same thing to happen again, that the Cowboys defense is going to be run all over. I just don't see that happening.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. At first, I had Devin Singletary in all of my lineups, and then I did a deep thought, and I was like, really? It's Devin Singletary. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
They're 6-point underdogs, and he's not their best player, skill player by a large margin, and he's not particularly cheap. And they might be using Tyron Tracy a little bit more. So I don't know. I might not have. I think I'm gonna do 4 lineups. I will have them in 1 or 0. Is my thought.
Yeah. Another thought I have for this slate, I think we're always kind of looking for some inversely correlated teammates. Who can we leverage, and who can we leverage that player with? And I think one really strong one tonight is, if you're not playing Dak Prescott, play Ezekiel Elliott. If you're not playing Ezekiel Elliott, play Dak Prescott. But particularly in that first direction, if you're not playing Dak, one of the ways that Dak fails is that all of their touchdowns come on the ground, in which case Zeke, I think, still is first in line for the goal line carries. Dowdle obviously seems to be taking more and more of a prominent role kind of between the 20s, but when they get close to that goal line, I think it's still going to be Zeke getting that ball. So I really like the idea of, if you're not playing Dak, play Ezekiel Elliott.
Yeah, I just kind of think in general Dowdle is going to be getting more in this offense than Zeke. But it's funny because I right now I think I have I mean, most of my lineups are Dak, or have Dak in it. It's hard for me to not have one, without him, unless it's like a Giants onslaught almost.
Yeah,
it's but I don't know. I just in general I kind of like Dowdle more than Zeke, but we'll see. Neither one of them has really been good. Like neither one really gets you 15 points. It's like it's almost like it's better to avoid using them. Period, if you can.
Mm-hmm. And importantly, there in lineups with Dak, I also prefer Dowdle. So I definitely don't disagree with your take there. It's just, if you're not playing Dak, which, as you said, is kind of hard to do. It's difficult to build a lineup that makes a lot of sense without him. That's when I really like Zeke. And so maybe that looks like, you have CeeDee Lamb to soak up a lot of the passing production, but maybe he doesn't score. He just goes, 10 for 160 and no touchdowns or something like that. Maybe you take Brendan Aubrey, hope for some field goals that they just don't get in the end zone a lot, and then go to Zeke as well and say, when they get in the end zone, it's on the ground with Zeke. So certainly there are ways to do it, but as always, the point is you're telling a story with your showdown lineup. Let's go back to the Giants side of things. I mentioned Daniel Jones being my favorite captain. First question is, do you have a favorite captain? And second question is, when you go Daniel Jones captain, how many of his receiving options do you want? Who are your favorites beyond Malik Neighbors?
Yeah, I have Daniel Jones as the captain, at least in one so far. And I generally will use Neighbors and, Robinson, maybe Theo, if you want to be really have like one really cheap player. I just, but yeah, it's like you don't have Devin Singletary in there. It's really the main thing. And if it's an onslaught where you're just somehow saying like the Giants are just going to beat the Cowboys, then you probably won't have Greg Joseph in there because you want those touchdowns. Otherwise, but yeah, I just don't like pairing him with Devin Singletary as the most important thing.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Dr. Rosen here asking, can you sub Aubrey instead of no Dak? Absolutely. We talk about this a lot, where if you're fading a quarterback, his kicker makes a lot of sense. As we just said, quarterbacks are so dependent on getting those touchdowns. quarterback is never going to get there on yardage alone unless he's Lamar Jackson and he's rushing for 110 rushing yards and doing it that way. Quarterbacks need touchdowns. If they're settling for field goals, it's going to hurt the quarterback. So absolutely, Aubrey in a lineup without Dak makes a ton of sense. Anything else here on the showdown? One thing we were asked to do last time is let's talk a little bit about some cheapies. So do you have any favorite salary savers, either individual players, or is it just kind of kickers and defenses for you?
Kickers, defenses, and Wandale, really. The only guy I like sub 3K is Theo Johnson, and I don't really like him that much, to be honest.
Yeah, I would like Theo Johnson. I would like Darius Slayton, if not for the fact that I think they're going to get some ownership. And so given the fact that they're going to get some ownership, I'd rather just go Giants defense. I'd rather go either kicker. I'd rather go Wandale at 4,800. So I'm with you there. I think it's more of a slate to me where I want to get difference with roster construction there. And instead of, so many people are going to say there are very clear guys at the top of the projections on this slate: Lamb, Neighbors, and the two quarterbacks. Maybe you add Singletary in there. A lot of people are just going to say, I want to get as many of those guys as possible, and I'll use Theo Johnson, Darius Slayton if I have to make that work. I kind of want to deviate from that and hope, maybe it's just two of those guys who really separate from everybody else. But that would also mean that I don't have to dumpster dive quite as low, which typically is my favorite strategy and definitely is going to be my favorite strategy.
And also, now that we talked about how these really low players just don't have a floor, that means like when you dumpster dive, you really might just get nothing. It's hard to expect these 15-point performances with less passing in general in this league. So you're kind of forced to using the more defenses and kickers and stuff like that, instead of just thinking that your $3,000 guy is going to get a touchdown and 50 yards.
And remember, when we talked, say that again.
I mean, it always could happen, but you're really just kind of hoping, not really. You're not really putting a lot of. It's really just more of a hope, not like this is a sharp decision. It's more just like I'm really hoping a luck box on this one guy.
Yeah, and to that point, remember that if it's not just about two high safeties, if it is so much about pressure, remember that these defenses are two defenses that are good at getting pressure. So this is definitely one of those games where it could be a low-scoring environment, not very fun passing production. So I like that. Deacon asks here, if we're going Giants defense at captain, is that a time to play Devin Singletary? And I think it is. And one thing I'll say, there's a big difference between Showdown and Pick6 tonight, which is Singletary can get there in Showdown on receiving production. We're going to talk Pick6 in a minute, but spoiler alert, my favorite pick on Pick6 tonight is less on Devin Singletary's rushing yards. So that's a very specific fade that I feel super confident in. I'm not as confident fading Singletary on Showdown just because he can catch 5 passes for 45 yards and be A-okay just from that.
Yeah, but he doesn't catch that many passes, is the only thing I'll point out. People very much overestimate how much passes he catches. And with Malik Neighbors, there's just less reason to throw in the ball. So I think he's the fade. When you really look at it. If you look at
it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I am without question fading Devin Singletary on Showdown tonight. My point is just I'm less confident in that fade actually working out than I am on Pick6.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just not confident ever with Showdown. I mean, you really can't be confident ever with DFS. Like you pick your spot is what you got to do with Showdown. Okay, like I'm trying to do 4 lineups, but I have to pick my spot. I can't try to I have all these different things. It's sort of with Pick6, I have so many different lineups that the lineups all make sense for the different game scripts, and one of them should hopefully hit. So I'm kind of covering my ass and hoping one of them hits, and most people just make their lineups just choosing random dudes. That I'm not so much really taking a stand on that many players that much. Whereas Showdown, I'm going to have just 4 lineups. I have to take a stand. At first, my stand was fading Malik Neighbors. And I'm like, why am I doing that? He's a little overpriced. And I was like, I'm going to have a lot of Wandale over. I'll still have more Wandale over Malik Neighbors, but whatever. And now it's more I think I'm going to fade Devin Singletary. And I'm also going to fade that it's going to be a close game. I'm going to have a Giants beat down. I'm going to have a Cowboys beat down. And I'm going to have two in the middle is kind of what I'm thinking. But the ones in the middle are not going to have Devin Singletary.
Yep, I agree there. Last thing I want to say about Showdown before we move on to Pick 6. Darius Slayton at $3,200 is still listed questionable. It's a thumb injury, so I certainly expect him to play. But if he were to miss, Jalen Hyatt, $600, will become pretty popular. And just a word of caution there, Darius Slayton, the starter, has gotten 5.6, 6.3, and 1.7 fantasy points in their 3 games. It's not like Jalen Hyatt would be stepping into some great role if Slayton were to miss. So I think that he would become bad chalk and would become yet another value option that I want to fade. Are you reading that similarly, TwoGun?
Yeah, look, if I'm not interested in Darius Slayton at 3,600, like, am I really going to be interested in his wing sprint running replacement just because he's a few thousand less? Not really.
Yeah, and to your point there,
all you need is Hyatt's main role to get there value-wise, but he's probably not the optimal.
Hyatt's main role would be to get the high safeties deeper down the field so that Malik Neighbors has more room underneath to do his magic and to actually earn the targets, not send them Hyatt's way. So I like that we are seeing that. Similarly, let's jump now to Pick 6. Again, if you have any questions, anyone out there, just drop those in the live YouTube chat. We will get to them as soon as we can. Just because we have moved on to Pick 6 doesn't mean you can't still ask questions about tonight's showdown or the main slate this weekend. Ask whatever you want. We'll answer whatever you want. In the meantime, Pick 6, if you haven't signed up yet, once again, use promo code FTN. As you see it on the screen, play $5, get $50 instantly in credits. Try it out. We're telling you it is really fun and it's speedable. You should be playing it for sure. So let's talk tonight's slate.
The thing I cannot emphasize more than enough is if you watched this stream last week, what did I tell you I loved? I love Patriots plus 6.5. I love Jacoby Brissett. I mean, obviously, I think we all know how the showdown went for me. Big zero. I mean, like I said, at least I took a stand, but my stand was very much wrong. Mm-hmm. I guess I was kind of right about Mike Williams, but the funny thing is, because I was right about, I actually won at Pick 6. Mm-hmm. I net profited at Pick 6 on a game I was terrible at simply because I made a variety of lineups and they all kind of made sense. And I didn't, have Jacoby Brissett over passing yards in every single one of them. So as long as you make your lineups make sense at Pick 6, I think you can, I'm not going to say you can turn a profit, but I think, it's very possible to happen. Like, so much more possible than the other pick'em games out there. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah.
And I'm focusing on, I'm doing just as much money on Pick 6 as I am doing on Showdown on this slate. And on the main slate, I did like, 40,000 on the main slate last week. I'm doing a lot on Pick 6. I obviously believe in it as a player. And it's a little bit different, Showdown versus main slate. Main slate, you really just focus on correlating and just making some correct hits. But on Showdown, we can talk about, maybe fading some of these popular plays that if it goes bad, like everyone else is going to, fewer people will split the pot. Mm-hmm. So you end up winning. Like last weekend, on the Monday night games, like everything went over. So a lot of people were splitting the pot. The payoffs weren't that great. But if it goes under, generally unders are, people are doing 60-40 over versus under. And sometimes it can be even more disparate if people love certain players. Yeah. Like, in the Jets-Patriots game, people mainly did the overs on the running backs. Yeah, Jacoby Brissett didn't get much overs, but everyone did the overs on the running backs, and both those guys went under. So the key question is, are people going to be really heavily over on some of these players more so than others? Because like CeeDee Lamb, I can see people being kind of split on. Like, yeah, that's a lot of yards. Like, I'm sure he'll get plenty of unders. Malik Neighbors, I don't know. That everyone might click over there.
Yeah, to me, the one that everyone's clicking over on, and look at that. To your point, you mentioned Lamb might be too high for a lot of people. Click just went down to 80.5. So people were definitely clicking less on CeeDee Lamb, 81.5 rushing yards. Singletary 60.5 is what I expect to be the most popular pick. I think almost everybody going to that number is going to be taking Devin Singletary more than 60.5. And I think a lot of people are going to be clicking that because, again, the narrative is Dallas can't stop the run. And to this point in the season, that's correct. It's not like they're pulling this narrative out of thin air. They haven't been able to stop the run. But game script has so much to do with it. Obviously, Dallas could jump out to an early lead and just force New York to have to throw the ball a lot. And then second thing is Dallas could just make a concerted effort to say, we are not going to get dominated on the ground. We're going to make Daniel Jones beat us tonight. And if they do that, Singletary is going to have trouble finding a lot of room. So my favorite pick on the slate, Devin Singletary less, 60.5 rushing yards. How do you feel about that one, too?
Yeah, honestly, I like it, and I'm kind of just doing it more myself right now. We kind of might have a Ramondre Stevenson type moment here. Mm-hmm. Like we saw what happened last Thursday with him. That kind of might happen again with his team that was also, roughly a 6-point underdog. So, Yep. It's just a lot. It's just a lot to expect out of him.
Yep. And if we do get the perfect game script for this less than, where it's Dallas leading, it's Dallas controlling the ball, the more on Dowdle's 39.5 seems really strong. You said it earlier, it just seems like Dowdle's taking more and more of the opportunity in this backfield. So how do you feel about Dowdle more 39.5 rushing yards alongside of the Singletary pick?
I definitely have a lot of Dowdle overs because I just kind of think he's the better back, and they might just control the game through him.
Yeah. So, do you prefer rush yards, or do you prefer rush plus receiving, or receiving yards on Dowdle? Any favorites there?
I'm kind of like indifferent on Dowdle. So it depends if I have like Dak. If I have Dak like over passing yards, then I'm going to use the rush plus. Like it depends if I have a Dak passing yards. If I have a Dak passing yards over, then I'll use rush plus receiving. If I have a Dak passing yards under, then I'll use just the rushing yards. Otherwise, I'm fairly indifferent.
Makes all the sense in the world. Let's look at some other things. Passing yards. Do you feel like you have a lean here on either of these guys, or any other picks in any category that you really like?
I kind of think completions is an interesting one. Our tool really likes the completions under from Malik Neighbors. Daniel Jones was at 20.5. It's down to 19.5, but that's kind of a nice pairing. I have quite a bit of Daniel Jones under completions with Malik Neighbors under completions. So that's just another one to look at. Although that doesn't go so well with the Devin Singletary under rushing yards.
But yeah, I think if you were doing it that way, I think what I would want to add, instead of the Daniel Jones completions, I would want to add Wan'Dale Robinson more than 4.5 receptions. Because I think there it's the same sort of idea, right? It's what happens if Dallas really makes a concerted effort to take Neighbors away in the passing game, and therefore Wan'Dale Robinson is being left open a lot. And it might be like early in the game that New York realizes, hey, you know what, we're going to have trouble getting Neighbors the ball tonight, so we should be scheming a lot of things for Wan'Dale to come open. I think that works really well together as well. So basically, what you guys watching should be noticing, it's not about the individual picks that we're quote unquote making here and showing you. This is how to think through these pick six plays, build pick six lineups that make sense, that just like in Showdown, that tell a very clear story, so that you don't have to get 6 things correct for a 6 for 6. You only have to get 3 things correct. Game script, how they approach coverage, things like that. If you only have to get 3 things right to go 6 for 6, you're going to have a much better chance than if you just take 6 random things and have to be right about 6 different things.
Yeah, and it's also like with certain things, like take like an interception. If you're going to bet on a guy throwing interception, like why is he throwing interception? Is it because the other team's dominating, perhaps? Yeah. Like you can take over on the other team and perhaps take interception over on your guy and also kicker under, because they're coming from behind, so they're not going to kick, not going to try to kick field goals. They're trying to get those touchdowns. It's just kind of like think about a game script and then input the players how it would work in that game script, instead of just saying, this guy sucks, this guy's cool, this guy sucks. Yeah, I don't know. Instead of doing that, like kind of think of different games and go with it. And it's okay to have you don't have to it's not like choosing a side. Like if you decide sometimes it makes sense to choose a more on this and a less on the same guy. Take I don't know, take Devin Singletary. I have some Devin Singletary overs in the Dak Prescott throws an interception and and Daniel Jones isn't throwing it that much. They're just kind of ground and pounding it against the Dallas Cowboys. That's when I actually would have a Devin Singletary over on his rushing yards. I'm not just taking Devin Singletary over rushing yards. Daniel Jones over passing yards. Malik Neighbors over. CeeDee Lamb over. Over. It makes sense. Sometimes it makes sense to go against a guy that you're, to actually back a guy that you're fading or to fade a guy that you're backing in general. It's all about making the lineup make sense.
Yep, 100%. We have some questions in the live chat that I want to get to, but before I do, you mentioned interceptions. I want to talk a little bit about Dak and Daniel Jones here. First question to you would be, which of these picks do you think will be the most popular tonight?
What someone throwing a pick?
On the interceptions, yeah, more or less.
Daniel Jones throwing a pick, I would think.
What was your answer?
I would say Daniel Jones throwing an interception is going to be the most common one.
I think so too. So I went into stats up that we have at FTN, our kind of secret weapon, if you will. Dak Prescott, second in the NFL so far with 6 charted turnover-worthy throws. That's a 4.9% turnover-worthy rate for him. Daniel Jones, 21st with only 3 turnover-worthy throws. So they both have 2 interceptions, but Daniel Jones only 3 turnover-worthy throws instead of 6 for Dak. That's a 2.9% turnover-worthy rate for Daniel Jones. So less on Daniel Jones' interceptions thrown is really interesting to me because not only are you getting what I think is a pretty good pick, but it's also a pick that I think a lot of people are going to be on the other side of. So if you're right about this and you get that 6 for 6, you get 5 for 5, whatever type of play you're doing, I think you're going to end up with a really nice payout on that as well. So that's an interesting one. But here's a great question. On Pick6, would you prefer making 4 different $5 lineups or one $20 lineup? What's your take here, TwoGun?
I would definitely make 4 $5 lineups. Yeah. It's just not that many, and you get to there's lots of different combinations. So I would definitely make 4 $5 lineups.
Yeah, and adding to that, I would say you want 4 different stories being told in those lineups.
No, in my case, it's 4 $500 lineups, but I understand most other people.
yeah.
Or $4,500 lineups, but
right.
I
think the stories being told in the lineups should be slightly different at minimum. Sometimes they can be totally different, right? One could be Dallas blows them out and Dowdle runs a lot and Singletary doesn't run. And the other one could be Giants blow them out and Dowdle never runs and Singletary runs a ton. But they all should be telling a story and then just switch something up in them a little bit. So you're kind of covering all the bases because every single one of them, if you're building these properly, are going to have a lot of expected value. And so kind of getting as many different stories told as possible is just going to help you actually realize that expected value and profit on the night. We're getting some other questions. I'll bring this one up right here, Roschon Johnson or Mostert, not because I have an answer for you at the time, to be honest. This is definitely not the stream. TwoGun and I are not the experts you want to ask about 1v1 start-sit decisions in your fantasy league. That's just not the game we play, so we're not going to be able to help you very much. But $4,100 Roschon Johnson on DraftKings this week definitely has my interest. I've been screaming as loud as I possibly can all offseason, all regular season so far that DeAndre Swift is bad, and this is going to be Johnson's backfield or Herbert's backfield sooner than later. It seems like it's sooner. Word is that Roschon Johnson going to have a much better workload this week. Already kind of burst onto the scene last week, really challenging Swift for that lead role. I think he's going to have the lead role this week. So 4,100 Roschon Johnson, very, very interesting to me. Back to Pick6.
It's just one of the things we might have a lot of value on this slate. It just really depends on all these injuries, who's really injured or not. We'll find out more tomorrow.
Yeah, and speaking of the main slate and all these injuries, so many of them are tight ends. So we just got done talking about how we think one of the most important things now on the slate, the most valuable thing is finding the tight end who goes for 25 plus. all of the guys who can go for 25 plus might be hurt this week, except for like 2 of them. So it might be a very challenging slate from that perspective. But at the same time, if all of those guys are hurt, guess what? That means there are going to be a lot of backup tight ends, not really running many routes, not getting many first read targets, but getting ownership. And so maybe the 2 or 3 remaining tight ends who can give us that big performance are just going to be overlooked because everyone wants to pay down. So in that way, it could really work in our favor. But we will
see week 1 where no tight end does more than 12 points.
Yeah.
It's just, you never know. But tight end, when that's just good to show you, like, tight end breaks the slate more than any other position. And that's just the way it's going to be going forward. And I think the better bet isn't on the no tight end does well, so you might as well just pay nothing. It's the I want to be on that guy that breaks the slate.
Yeah.
And it's just unfortunate that I was, on Stan Laporta, and I don't know why I didn't do Dallas Goedert. That was just dumb. That's just dumb. It was an oversight by myself.
Yeah, I feel pretty bad about that one because I had him in the early slate, and so my early only lineup was great. I had both Saquon and Dallas Goedert and was leveraging all of the Saints chalk through those guys. So that worked out really well, but then I didn't have them on the main slate, which means I didn't have them with the Dalton, Deontay, Thielen stack that did so well and could have really broken the slate if Thielen hadn't gotten hurt at halftime. So that was a bummer, but it sure feels like we're getting close to that big one, and hopefully it'll come this week. Of course, 2 of our subscribers have already hit for over $100,000. And last week we had another one turn $8 into $6,000. So the winners have come already at FTN. The GPP scores doing their job. Just hasn't been myself or yourself so far, TwoGun, but our time is coming soon. I feel it.
We'll see what happens. Hopefully a Pick6 will find me over. We'll see.
Yeah, very true. Also, I think a good point there. I've been posting underdog plays, prize picks plays in our Pick'em Discord channel as well. So anyone out there who's interested in all of these games, not just the Pick6.
Am I finally able to give up on Cooper and Watson? That's a good question.
That is a good one.
Cooper did great.
Well, I was going to say, why would you give up on Amari Cooper now? He just had a great game.
Although I will say, like, I did 2 futures bets in the offseason. I did the Saints and I did the Browns. And I think, like, I'm gonna be going to Arizona kind of like late October, and sports betting's legal there, and I'm probably gonna pound the Saints some more. I think I'm gonna have to lay off the Browns. I think Deshaun Watson may be that bad. I don't know, like I don't know. The Browns just aren't that great, and
Deshaun looks terrible.
Yeah,
he looks absolutely terrible.
So yeah, like. But, the better question is, when am I going to be going crazy DeAndre Hopkins again? Because I got my best ball lineups, and he is, 19 points as well for that. But, we'll talk Monday night slate, and it'll be free. And I almost can guarantee you I'm going to be talking about Nook's son. So we'll see.
Deshaun has already been sacked 16 times. And let me grab this stat on his performance against the blitz, because let me tell you, it is absolutely atrocious. And it's just fun to look at how bad Deshaun Watson has been for obvious reasons. But against the blitz, Deshaun is 17 of 37 for 187 yards. That's 3.9 yards per attempt, 0 touchdowns, 1 interception, and 10 sacks. Blitzing Deshaun Watson has just been so incredibly effective. He's dead last in DYAR when blitzed, negative 185 yards passing above replacement. Man, it's been a lot of fun to watch him struggle like this. And yet, even with him struggling like this, Amari Cooper was able to post a really nice number last week. So we certainly can't rule him out of any slate. And I think whenever he's contrarian,
he also got lucky. He got that first touchdown, like on his first play. I mean, he got 2. It's a lot of times when a guy is hated, I'm like, I don't know, maybe he's coming back. And then sometimes some guys just suck. Like Bryce Young. Clearly, I mean, look what Andy Dalton did. Like, sometimes, like, I make fun of people for being Captain Obvious, like, because that's what the public does. They think they're onto something great, and it's just obvious, and it's baked into the cake. But sometimes obvious is right. Maybe just John Watson's just bad. Bryce Young is just bad.
Yeah, it certainly seems that way. I agree, Hemi. I think I thought last week was going to be the week that Deshaun really kind of put a competent performance on the board. He didn't really The issues are just there. He's holding the ball too long. He's not diagnosing pressure. It just like every drive, it seems like he takes a sack that he just has no business taking, and it kills their momentum. But Cooper can still be in play every single week, so we'll probably continue to go back to that.
That's when Sean Watson inevitably gets hurt.
Yeah, that's true too. Very true.
Bench essentially, vaccine he's hurt.
Mm-hmm. I think if there's a player we can root for to get hurt in the league, it's Deshaun Watson. I think we're okay on moral grounds there. But
yeah, he's in a lot of my best ball lineups, but whatever.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, I'm just like a side. I have CMC in one of my $10,000 best ball lineups. That's in third place.
Wow.
Like, please, can he come back? Like, deep in my soul, I feel like he's never coming back. But like, I don't freaking know anything about an Achilles. I don't even know where your Achilles is. Something on your foot or your heel or something like that. I don't know. I don't know about any of this stuff. But I'm like, oh man, he's never come back. I'm screwed. But maybe he'll come back. Hopefully. Any
other thoughts on the Pick6 slate tonight?
Not really. I mean, I do kind of like the Wandale over. He's clearly getting a lot of. I just kind of like Wandale as a value play in general.
Yeah.
But and I don't even feel like I have to use it with the Daniel Jones over. You can also kind of use it with the Malik Neighbors under and not take a position on Daniel Jones. It's kind of a little sneaky way with these one game things.
Yep.
But that's about it.
So I think that's a great segue, because I think it brings us kind of to the main slate for Pick6, where it's important that everyone realize that the two Pick6 games are almost like completely different from one another, whether you're playing them for these island games like tonight or you're playing on the main slate. Reason being, on these island games, there are so few players to choose from, so few projection types to choose from, that inevitably some of them are going to be really popular. And so you get instances where the amount of 6-for-6 lineups is really low, and you're going to get instances where it's really high, and therefore you're getting instances where the payout is enormous and where the payout is really small. On the main slate, there are so many players, there are so many projection types to choose from, that you're never going to get that much of a fluctuation in the payouts. And so the only goal on the main slates is to go 6-for-6, and the way we do that is by correlating as much as we can through stacking. So TwoGun, do you have any favorite stacks so far on Pick6 for the main slate?
It's funny because it's gonna be probably the chalkiest on. It's gonna be super chalk on DFS main slate. I just like Andy Dalton over with Deontay Johnson over and Xavier Legette over. And if you really want to be sneaky and not put Deontay Johnson on there just because you really want to fade that chalk on main slate, fine. But I think he's going to be. I mean, I think his questionable tag is BS. That's 60.5. It seems seems pretty suspiciously low. Probably should be like 70, 75. And I'm just going to take the stack there with Andy Dalton with the Red Rocket and ride him for another week. And then
that is definitely my favorite as well. And one thing I'd point out there is notice, let's say you look at, I think our JPP scores, for example, are going to say that Deontay Johnson is a bad play. And they're going to say that despite viewing him as the clearly best option in that price range. His smash percentage is going to be the highest. His fail rate is going to be the lowest. And yet he's going to have a bad GPP score. And so you can look at that and say, well, man, that makes it like such a scary fade. I don't really want to pivot to somebody around him because everyone around him is far less likely to succeed than he is. You can ease that stress by using this stack on Pick6. And then the great thing there is like there's plenty of room for both of those things to work out, right? Deontay could go 6 catches, 70 yards, no touchdowns. Nobody who used him on DraftKings is that thrilled with it. You are certainly thrilled with the fade, and yet he also goes more than his receiving yards projection. So you can get the best of both worlds, but the nice thing is you're getting this like real inverse correlation between your Pick6 plays and your tournament lineups, and that just makes kind of a world of difference. And on the fun side of things, not just like mathematically and financially, but on the fun side of things, it means chances are you have something that you can really root hard for, which is at the end of the day, like that's the goal, right? We're just trying to make these Sundays where we'd be glued to the TV watching football anyway. that much more fun.
I'll point out our projections show him for about 80 yards right now, which is much better than 62.5.
Yeah.
Look, let's just say he goes for 75 and he goes for 5 catches for 75, 12.5 points. That's perfectly fadeable.
Yeah.
12.5 points on a 5,600 player. It's not an entire bust, but it's certainly not it's not something you want to win a GPP with. So that goes to show you why the difference between the DFS main slate, where it's all about the ceilings. DFS main slate is ceiling, 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 and this is just pure binary, like one or the other. Like, doesn't matter if he gets 70 yards or 140 yards. That's the nice thing about Pick 6. It's just a little bit different. You have to understand what makes you win and what makes you lose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Tank Dell looks like he is certainly going to miss this week as well. So another one of my favorite stacks for Pick 6 is going to be CJ Stroud, Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, all more. Nico Collins right now, 79.5 receiving yards. Stephon Diggs, 60.5, and only 265.5 for CJ Stroud in a matchup with Jacksonville, who just got absolutely shredded by Josh Allen. Josh Allen nearly got to 265 in the first half. So I really like that one as well. You can pair those together. You can pair them with any of your other favorites. Lots of ways that you can take it on this main slate. But you should be playing more Pick 6 on the main slate. You should be playing it more on Island games. This game's a lot of fun. And like we keep saying, it really is beatable. And it's not going to be this. The edge is not going to be this high for very long. Honestly, it might last the entire season, might last into next season. But there is an expiration date on just how high this edge is. But for now, it's clear sailing. Get in now. This is the best time to play.
Yeah, again, it's funny how people think, like, I'll think about it later. Well, if you want to win, if you really want to get an edge at something, it needs to be new. And people don't need to know. Because by the time everyone figures it out, that's when the edge is gone. And it's funny because lots of people play on those other sites where you're playing against the house. And they'll whine and bitch if they get like a 15-1 on the Pick 6 instead of the 20-1 on the other side. And the first thing is, well, your lineup must be terrible because generally when I make a lineup on the other side, they're going to pay me 8-1 because I'm correlating my picks. So you must be doing something wrong. But even still, it's just one side basically allows you to win. The other side does not allow you to win when it comes down to it. Yeah. Choose the one that's going to allow you to win. Mm-hmm. At least, you may not win, but at least you're allowed to win.
Yeah.
Give yourself a chance.
This is a great comment right here. We need a Pick 6 optimizer. So, Amy, first of all, you should know a Pick 6 tool, just like our Prize Picks Pick'em tool, is in development. So we're going to have something great for it. We're never going to have an optimizer that just spits out lineups because there's no real way to kind of code that into all of the strategy that we're talking about, how to increase payouts, how to increase correlation. We will always be able to do a much better job of that, just building them by hand, just using our own brains rather than an optimizer. But in terms of a tool that's going to tell us how correlated certain plays are, like we were talking earlier about Daniel Jones and Malik Neighbors, less completions and receptions, or Malik Neighbors less than 6.5 receptions with Wan'Dale Robinson more than 4.5 receptions. Which one of those is more correlated? Which is the better correlated pairing? It's kind of tough for us to say. We're going to have a tool that tells us really well, measures that really well. So that tool is going to be spectacular, and it is in development. I don't have an ETA for you guys, but it's coming soon, and it's going to be pretty darn powerful and just so much fun to use, and it's going to make building these Pick 6 lineups even easier.
Yeah. And right now, honestly, our current tool already gives you tells you stuff about projections and stuff and correlations. So you can just kind of, you can, it's not hard to use it for Pick 6 as well.
The biggest difference is that we're pulling currently in the tool from Prize Picks. And so if Prize Picks has a projection for a player or a projection type that Pick 6 doesn't have, you're not going to be able to find that. But let's say Prize Picks has a guy at 84.5 yards, and on Pick 6 he's at 81.5. You can just type in the box, change it to 81.5, and you get the same answer. So you can absolutely use the tool that currently exists for Pick6. It's just not as specific to Pick6 as it's going to be, but still, you should check that out. Just search NFL Prize Picks tool on Google to find it, or you can just go through the site, just go DFS and find that Pick'em tool. So I think that'll do it for the show. Any closing thoughts here, TwoGun?
Nope.
Awesome. Please, on your way out, like the show, drop a comment. Thank you for everybody who has participated in the live chat. That makes our job a whole lot easier finding these talking points throughout the stream. You guys have been awesome today. Thanks again, and we will catch you Sunday morning for subscribers. Otherwise, we'll be back 5:30 Eastern on Monday to talk through the slate for all of you guys. So thanks again.